Thank you for joining us today. It means a lot to us to have so many people here to be part of this sort of big milestone for us. This is the first public screening of this video series, and so we're very excited to share it with you. My name is Kaylee Raber. I'm the director of the Health Design Lab here at Carr, and I've had sort of the real honor of being part of this team and this collaboration since our first video series in, I think, 2020. So this is the third that we've done, and we're really excited to have some folks from the previous video series here to celebrate with us today as well. I'm going to begin by acknowledging that we're on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. I think it's particularly important to acknowledge this in the context of the work that we do in health. Indigenous people have stewarded these lands for centuries, and yet as a direct result of colonial policies, forced displacement, and the continued erasure of Indigenous people's ways of knowing and being, Indigenous people today continue to face health inequities, systemic racism, and stigmatization in our communities and in our healthcare system. And we acknowledge that true healing can't happen without truth and accountability and systemic change. And today we're going to talk about our efforts to dismantle mental health and substance use stigma, specifically in the workplace, and how truth and accountability and systemic change have really been central to the conversations that we've been having as we try to sort of uplift the stories and the wisdom of people with lived experience. We are going to introduce you to our team members and our panelists. Then we will let them go and sit back down so we're not staring at them. And then we will screen all three videos. There's three videos. They can be viewed sort of separately, but today we'll watch them all together in one go. And then we'll bring them back up and we'll have an opportunity to ask questions. And today it's really about a dialogue around the making of the videos and how they've come to be. In the future, the videos will be used to have dialogues specifically about stigma and mental health and substance use in the workplace. And Katie will probably talk a bit more about that. So I think we'll start with introductions.
Hello. First person to use the mic. Good afternoon. My name is John Hannon. I'm Associate Professor of Communication Design here at Carr, and I've been involved with each of this three series of the videos. And yeah, very happy to be here today. Is that all you want from me? That's all I want from me, I guess. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Mai. I'm the Director of Patient Experience and Community Engagement at BC Mental Health and Substance Use Services. I'm a first-generation settler on unceded Coast Salish territories and have had the real privilege to work with storytellers, which has been an incredibly decolonial practice in and of itself, and really reflecting on what knowledge is valid and what knowledge is seen as valid and legitimate and what isn't. And so I'm excited that we're doing this for the third time and being able to amplify and uplift these voices.
My name's Devin, so I'm one of the storytellers in the series, and I got involved about, I think it was like almost 2 years ago now, when they asked me if I wanted to tell my story in front of all of my colleagues, and I threw up in my mouth a little bit and then decided to do it. So yeah, I work in leadership in healthcare, my Monday to Friday gig, and then in my private practice, I specialize in PTSD, and so work with a lot of first responders, and so you'll hear from the video I talk about trauma, and that's kind of a big piece of my life is working in that field. So happy to share our stories, and I'll pass it over to you.
Hi, my name is Danny. I'm a social worker coming from the Nanaimo First Nations territory, which is colonially known as Nanaimo, BC. I've been a social worker for about 7 years now, and at my current job within BC Mental Health and Substance Use for almost 5. I work at a outpatient psychiatric clinic for high-risk folks. I got onto this project because they sent out an email asking for people with lived experience, and I felt like I was ready to at least share some of my story, so figured, why not?
I was hoping they were going to go on for a little bit longer because I'm quite nervous right now. Hello, everybody. My name is Alberto Almeida. I use he, him, el pronouns. Whenever I introduce myself, I tend to do it in two different ways. So, on a professional level, I'm a director over at BC Mental Health and Substance Use Services. My area of specialization is suicide prevention and life promotion, and my main area of focus is provincial crisis lines. And I've recently taken on this role where now I'm working also in virtual care. So using virtual reality in clinical environments is currently the next thing that I'm working on. So that's the professional side. On a personal side, I am a second generation Latino. My mom is from Chile and my dad's from Ecuador. And as a result of that, I grew up in between two different worlds. Chileans were very light-skinned Latinos, and very much had this like the value of like European ideals were strongly ingrained within the culture. And then on my dad's side, he was more of a dark-skinned Latino. So I identify as mestizo, which is a bit of a mix. And that was more focused on like indigenous culture and black culture. And so I grew up in this environment where I often felt like I was moving between two worlds. And as a result of that, I often felt like I had to put on different masks no matter where I went. Being involved in this video series actually has made me feel like I don't have to wear those masks as much anymore. And so look forward to all of you seeing these videos, seeing us in our most rawest forms, and looking forward to the discussion later.
Wow, that was incredibly eloquent.
Yeah, go sit behind
For
it.
somebody nervous. Yeah. Well, all right. I'm Lisa. It's all right. Yeah. I'm Lisa. I'm one of the research assistants that worked on this video series alongside my coworker, my partner, and my partner in the project. Sorry. And yeah, so we worked on the visuals from start to finish, and also the animations from start to finish as well. So yeah, everything encompassing the visuals, and I was also given the opportunity to be a part of the storytelling sessions as the person listening. And this project, I'm very excited to be here today, and I was excited from the very beginning to start working on it as well, because personally it's very meaningful in the space of mental health, and I was very touched by the stories, so I'm hoping that it has the same impact to everyone here. Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Tianhui Wan, and I'm also the research assistant. And yeah, we worked on the visuals and the animation for this project, and also be a part of the storytelling sessions. And we're glad to be here today.
We'll get Katie to come up and give a little more context to the project and why we're doing it.
Thank you so much. So at BC Mental Health and Substance Use Services, we had observed a real opportunity to identify and understand how stigma is showing up both in patient care, in our minds, as staff, and within the workforce. So this project started that we call it the Unite Initiative, and then really haphazardly force this acronym, understanding each other together. But it was, the wise minds who came together, people with lived experience who had felt that this really reflected the heart of the work, coming together united. So we started in 2020 with an evidence review just to understand what does the literature say about how stigma shows up in healthcare settings, how it shows up in mental health settings, substance use settings, and in our correctional health services, which is within our purview. And then how does this show up when those are overlapping? And oftentimes, as many of you will know, mental health and substance use are concurrent and they show up together. And then being criminalized as a result of the illness oftentimes is also a lived reality of many folks. And so what does the evidence say about this? And while it was slim, especially when it came to concurrent disorders or intersecting identities, we did see really strongly that when we combined storytelling through education, really amplifying the voices of people who are walking through this, and dialogue, that was the most effective way that we know in reducing stigma. Stigma being defined kind of at a structural level, so how it's really baked and woven into our institutions, our policies, our hiring processes, our intake processes, who gets access to care, who doesn't get access, but also social. So what are in our minds, what are our attitudes, our beliefs, our behaviors that are kind of harder to measure, but ultimately those are, really well connected with each other. The way that we adopt stereotypes influences the way that we write policies. And then as a third level, it's recognizing the internalized stigma that our clients and our staff really face when those stereotypes are applied or really endorsed by the public. And so how does self-stigma show up in those spaces? So looking at structural stigma, social stigma, and self-stigma, we had with lived experience strategic advisors kind of designed a multi-pronged initiative, the Unite initiative, to address those three levels. We're just focusing on the storytelling and the dialogue bubbles here, but there's other, art-based methods like facilitator training, capacity building that we do as well. Really at the root of it is lived and living experience leadership and ensuring that we continue to walk in evidence-informed ways. And so with the storytelling, this was a real opportunity for a very tertiary clinical environment like BC Mental Health and Substance Use Services, because it's easy in institutions like healthcare and education and governance to believe that we know what the people we're serving are experiencing. Knowledge is often made about someone without their input. And I think in custodial care environments where some folks might not be there on their own volition or they're there against their will, that happens a lot more common than we would like. And so storytelling is a way to really disrupt that and bring forward underheard voices, make those stories visible, because it's a lot easier to be complicit to that and to allow them to go invisible. And so our first series, which was in 2020, was focused on patients or care seekers. So what was it like to move through a system and seek care for yourself? And some of you will have seen or been a part of that. Then our second series was to look at the support person, the family, and what was it like to be a family caregiver as a mother, a sister, and a daughter. Those were our three. Shirley's actually here today. She was the mother storyteller in our second series. And while it's not always a clear distinction of, okay, today I'm a patient, today I'm a family, or today I'm a staff, we recognize these are all intersecting identities. We did, through that process, really start to hear from our own colleagues and peers at BCMHSUS, like, oh, this happened to me, or like this happened to my son or my child. And so we had identified kind of naturally and serendipitously, we hadn't thought to do this right from the get-go, that staff was an underheard voice, staff with lived experience at BC MHSUS, and very likely staff everywhere, right? So BC MHSUS is probably one of the safer places to kind of come out and disclose, but it is a silenced voice. And so our third series, which you'll see today, really focuses on how lived experience is coming in, how it's seen within an employment environment, and really wanting to shift the narrative that lived experience is a gift and it's a competitive asset when you're applying for jobs. And you'll hear a lot of that today, so I won't go on, but the one thing that we'll leave here as an invitation, I guess, is today is about listening to the stories, and then the work that comes is around dialoguing around them. So the storytellers here had co-designed a dialogue guide, a set of questions that kind of move a learner through a model of reflection after watching each video. So we will do things like this where it's bigger, but sometimes the change really happens in like smaller groups, 6 to 12 people, where it's facilitated by someone with lived experience, and we move through a dialogic process that ends with actions that folks would take and starts to shift some of that social stigma that we have talked about. So that's a really brief overview of how Unite came to be, and yeah, I'll just leave that invitation here in learning more about the dialogues, because I think that's where a lot of that change will happen.
I'll just very briefly explain sort of how the videos get made, and then we will let you watch them. So they're created through a collaborative co-design process, primarily over Zoom. It took us about 8 or 9 months to do this. The sessions were co-facilitated between the design team and then 2 people who aren't here today because they couldn't make it, but we have 2 strategic advisors that help co-facilitate the conversations with the storytellers. And in those Zoom sessions that we had, we would record them, and the storytellers, we would ask them questions, and they sort of quite boldly and vulnerably shared their experiences working at PHSA while navigating personal mental health and substance use experiences. And so as we kind of gathered together, we listened to their stories, recording their words as they responded to those questions and prompts and exchanging dialogue and getting to know one another. We then reviewed like hours and hours and hours of recorded video content and looked at how we could cut and recut the audio and select down the audio to make what is now sort of 24 minutes of audio. And then it became this process of Lisa and Chenwei working with the storytellers to figure out how do we visualize their stories. And so this is a screenshot from us from the sort of very early character development process, trying to figure out how we wanted to represent their stories. Yeah, and we aim to sort of create these videos in a very collaborative way, making sure that the storytellers have control over what's being shared, how their story is shared. We were going to play the videos for you, and then hopefully we'll have some time for questions. The videos are very powerful. The storytellers have been very honest in sharing their experiences and the good and the bad. The videos can be upsetting or triggering to watch, so we do want to make sure that everybody takes care of yourself in watching these videos and know that you're welcome to step out of the room and come back or go and come back. Perfect. So you are well supported. All right, I will now invite you guys to go get a seat so that you don't have to watch us watch you. And I'll see if we can play this.
I remember early when I first started working here, one of my colleagues was talking about another person that he really admired. This really sticks out to me because he described this man as like, this guy's been through hell. He had a rough childhood. He's been through so many universities and he is awesome. He's one of the best people I know. He never quits. And I think that all of his experiences actually really add to his abilities as a clinician. And I was just like, gobsmacked. I couldn't even believe that somebody would genuinely believe that. I'm just so used to the stigma that it was truly one of the pivotal moments of my life of being like, holy crap, my experience could actually mean something and somebody else might even see that. I'm a social worker with BC Mental Health and Substance Use. I'm a gay and transgender man, and I have a historical diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. I've also struggled with depression and anxiety my whole life. I think it's worth saying that being transgender in and of itself is not a mental illness, and that it's actually been a great source of strength for me and a great source of my healing journey. Currently, I am doing a master's degree in clinical social work with a trauma-informed practice specialization.
I'm both a mental health advocate and a person with lived experience with post-traumatic stress disorder. I currently am in a leadership position within the healthcare field. I also have a private practice where I teach about trauma as well as provide therapy for those who have experienced trauma. Most importantly, I'm a mom, a wife, and have an amazing community of friends who support me in my life and my work.
I'm a director with BC Mental Health and Substance Use Services with a passion for mental health promotion, suicide prevention, and life promotion. I'm a second-generation Latin American of Chilean and Ecuadorian descent with lived experiences of depression and suicidal ideation.
Employment takes the hard things that I've gone through in life and channels them in a way that is helpful for others. It's a big part of my identity. It's a source of survival for me. It's a source of fulfillment for me. And it's a source of joy for me. I remember prior to going to this role, I actually said from the very beginning that I'm a person with lived experience. But the one thing about that, the hesitation I would have is fear of employment, of not being employed, because I could be perceived as being unstable. I could be perceived as, when is this guy going to break down? There's no predictability with him. And that, I think, leads back to the stigma. It's the stigma of, if I have X mental health condition, then I am X type of employee.
I don't mind sharing my mental health pieces and mood pieces and the post-traumatic stress part. I'm overly excited to share that, actually. I've been doing it quite a lot in the last few years. However, if I were to bring up my historical opioid use disorder, it's like, whoa, no, we don't talk about that one. Right. And the reason I don't is because I see so much stigma against all my fellow employees who show up and talk about substance use. And I think there's this little seedy underbelly that we don't talk about that one, but we can maybe talk about this one. And so I would say I would share pieces of my story with different people, depending on who they were and in what position of power they were in, and which piece of me is acceptable and which isn't.
My fear talking about this stuff is that somebody up in the stratosphere of PHSA is going to use my diagnosis against me to tell me that I can't do my job, that I have worked so hard for and I'm so passionate about. I'm also very careful about what diagnoses I share, because it's pretty easy to tell people that I have anxiety and depression. It is not easy to tell people that I had borderline personality disorder. That's just not something that we talk about. A way of unpacking that stigma is acknowledging that and pushing back against it when you see it or hear about it.
I see it all the time. I see it in the way that people with substance use disorders are treated in the workplace, where if you have an off day, it's assumed that they must have relapsed. People have become depersonalized to become their disorder. Someone told me that last week, that's why they don't disclose having trauma symptoms, because their fear of how their colleagues will treat them and how that will show up for them at work.
Stigma has a massive impact on a person's livelihood, vitality, ability to access needs, resources. It's a system that can hold people back from not only living their best lives, but being able to live a life worth living at all. I worked at a fast food joint for 4 years back when I was a teenager, and it was the worst experience possible. If you didn't show up to work, you're basically ruining it for everybody, and they don't care why. It doesn't matter. And God forbid you have to go home in the middle of your shift or just be a person at all.
I see stigma as being connected to privilege. If you are mentally unwell, if you have a substance use challenge, all those things put you at a disadvantage from the perspective of society. I remember in a previous job being told that when you come into this workplace, leave your problems at the door. People don't want to see it. I remember that was one of the specific things that my supervisor told me. And I learned at that time to edit myself, adjust myself to the environment, because I needed work, I needed to survive, and I needed a distraction from the depression and the pain. So all those things kind of fed into this belief that the workplace is a place where you show up with a certain role, but it's not who you really are.
In the past, I have disclosed my mental illness to previous employers, and it was not received well. It was received like a moral failure, and I was basically suggested that I hide it moving forward. For my practicum, I had told my supervisor that I needed a mental health day as a sick day. And I was told at that point that I should never, ever share that to an employer. We have to be so careful in our workplace relationships and make sure we know who's cool.
It comes with that risk. It's like high risk, high reward. You reveal yourself, you find people who either don't like you or you find people that are fully with you. I remember there were days where I was in rough shape, but still I had the mindset of, I'm in the work environment. Your emotions can wait for your therapy session, compartmentalize it. And I couldn't one day. I broke down, cried my eyes out, and my leader met me with a tremendous amount of kindness and constantly allowed me to feel more comfortable in being myself in the workplace. And it's something about the feeling of I can show up as I am, and that also means I can show up well and I can show up unwell. And it doesn't change the perception of my performance, my abilities, my capabilities, and what I can offer in the role.
I think you run a risk when you work in mental health and you are the mental health provider, and then you have your own mental health stuff. You get worried about things like competency. Will you be able to treat others? And so even when I was having a really hard time with PTSD to the point where I was hospitalized for a little bit, when I came back, I remember thinking, I'm not telling anybody where I've been because they're going to say I'm not competent, or I don't think that's true. I think you can be a very human therapist and have your own mental health stuff and actually be way better at it because you know what that experience has been like.
At one point, I had pretty intense personal stuff that I was dealing with. I sent my leader at the time an email about what was going on the night it happened because it involved my safety, and then called into work sick the next day. It was very obviously a mental health day. The next day, when I was back at work, I opened my inbox to find a calendar invitation from my then leader for a meeting with HR about my sick day. In that meeting, I had to recount to that leader and a total stranger from HR what I did during my mental health day. The meeting had to end early because I was absolutely sobbing at the end of telling my story. Having to essentially prove that I was really taking a mental health day was a harsh reality check that mental health isn't always taken seriously, even in a crisis situation, and only added on to the serious stress of everything I already had going on.
If I had an unsupportive director, I'm not feeling well. Okay, what kind of symptoms do you have? Headaches, stomach. And I'd keep it physiological because I would think that that's the main thing that's going to be valued in an environment that doesn't care for mental health. If I have a supportive director, I'll tell her the truth. I'll tell her everything. I'll tell her whatever is needed or whatever is required, and I'll be very open.
I came back from a mental health leave, and I remember coming in to sit down with this new leader that had gotten hired while I was away. And when I sat down, she looked at me and she said, before you come back to work, you need to go to every single person in your department and you need to apologize to them for the amount of work that they had to pick up because your position was vacant. I literally burst into tears at that moment because it took so much guts for me just to walk in that room to talk about my return and the shame that I felt when she said that to me. And while this was my experience, this was quite a long time ago, and I've noticed a lot of changes happening within our healthcare system in the last decade that are more supportive of staff mental health.
When all of the bodies of the residential school children across Canada were being unburied, I reached out to my aunt and she told me that my dad had actually attended a training school, which I didn't know. I called my supervisor. She was the first person at work that I told, and I was like, I don't even know how to process this. Like, can I go home? And she was like, oh my God, I was about to tell you to go do what you need to do to be okay right now. So I left right at the beginning of the workday, and my supervisor was just so cool about it. It's one of those things that makes you want to keep coming back.
I think the biggest stigma was coming from HR practices and from leaders within my job. For example, the employees who use substance use policy is really, really old. It's outdated and it's not evidence-based. If you are showing up at work with a mental health concern and or a substance use concern, you're treated like you're doing something wrong and that you need to be supervised and that you need to be monitored. So I think systemically there is inherent stigma just in the workplace. When those policies were applied to me and they didn't fit who I am, they are very punitive. And it was actually quite a shaming process and very unhelpful. But it's been really great that this policy has been updated, and I know it's in its final stages of approval and should be implemented literally at any moment, which is a huge, huge leap forward for the organization.
It's been really refreshing in the last couple of years to see strong messaging coming from our way up leaders that say, hey, you can call in and take a mental health day and that's okay. And how powerful of a message that is for not only the staff to be able to use that, but for leaders who might be hesitant and how to support their teams to be able to lean into that and have the support of the organization as well.
One of the things that I've noticed that I would like is a formal acknowledgement that mental health days are sick days. We feel fortunate to have new leaders who have helped us and understood us from that perspective, and we can come to them and speak to them about those mental health days without fear of being reprimanded. But I also don't know if everyone else has that type of leader. And because there was no formal acknowledgement of this in the past, it left the mental health day piece open to subjectivity. I'm seeing more staff talk about mental health in a way where it doesn't seem so stigmatized. I have had conversations about how fun a barbecue was that transitioned into the type of antidepressants that me and a colleague uses. And we literally bonded over the types of medications we went through and the different reactions that we had. There's a feeling of camaraderie and safety that comes with that.
I think that at this point, just about every single person has lived experience in some capacity. If it's not through their own personal lived experience, it's family, it's friends, it's neighbors. I don't know how you would move through this world without ever meeting somebody who doesn't struggle with their mental health at some point. But especially for people who are working in mental health, every single person is here for a reason. So if people could just be honest, that is one of the biggest changes to stigma that there is just being honest about that. And that's a really good way to show up too.
If you have lived experience, you're not alone. You're one of us. And we're literally everywhere. The thing is, if it's not safe, we won't come out. I feel like there's a lot of people who already have those experiences and need to know that it's safe to come out.
I would say it's really hard when you hear people using stigmatizing narratives around the patient cares. I feel like being like, hey, let's pause and look around the room right now. And I bet at least 10 people out of the 20 people here also have lived experience, but everyone just kind of quietly sits there and doesn't say anything. And I also know that showing up as a leader who will talk to my immediate team about my own lived experience, they feel like they have permission to share theirs. Because if I'm not doing it, they're not going to feel they have permission to do it either. We have to know that we're not immune just because we work in the field. We don't need to be perfect. And we can do a better job taking care of our staff by supporting and normalizing and celebrating mental health support for staff. In all my time, I've yet to come across someone in leadership who's outright disclosing what's going on with them. And so what's the implicit stigma in there? Why aren't people doing that? That's why I wanted to do that in my role, because I've got literally the word lead in my job title, right? And so I wanted to speak up to that because I want people to see that you can be in a leadership role and have a diagnosed mental health disorder, that you can have lived experience with substance use, and you can still be in a high up position.
The one time I remember a high up leader actually said that he had lived experience was during a presentation. And I was like, oh, cool. Not that bad. Not too shabby. This guy knows what he's talking about. And it's also kind of cool to see leaders in the position of, like, if you are attempting to destigmatize an environment or take that element away, lead by example.
I remember within the first year of me working here, my team lead at the time, we were discussing one of my clients who has psychosis and he keeps going off of his medications because every time he feels well, he stops taking them. So we were talking about how we can navigate that with this client. And she was like, you know what? I tell my clients who experience this that I have depression and that I know that I have to take pills for the rest of my life and that that's okay. And that was one of those moments where I was just totally floored because I've never had a supervisor admit that they have depression to me. I was like, whoa. There are people that are never going to be able to speak to some of the things that I can talk about when it comes to privilege or oppression or growing up dirt poor or growing up into any abuse or violence. And they won't be able to add that context to any position that I can add walking into every position. I think it's really important to be able to understand like the depth of the pain that people can feel. I don't know how people that don't have that experience can work with it in the same way. There's one question on the Columbia suicide assessment that actually bothers the hell out of me. It's the question of asking, so what is like the cause of your suicidal ideation? Do you want to do it because you want to end the pain, or do you want to do it for attention? And I just loathe asking people that question. And it is a requirement of my job. I totally understand that the Columbia has a lot of evidence, but I also can very much see that it wasn't created by somebody with lived experience.
I've never been asked about my own experience personally in any job application ever. 90% of what I do is working with trauma exposed professionals, but I think my own experience was just so not welcome that I didn't even consider that it was something that I could share.
I once applied to a job that did ask for that. They flat out say individuals with lived experience of mental health challenges. And I think that's where a little bit of the bravery started to kick in for me, where it's like, when I did disclose, I actually saw it as an advantage. This should also be seen as an asset because it is an asset. And then people can be encouraged to speak to it if they feel comfortable, or the opportunity provided in the interview. I saw a post on LinkedIn and it says, studies have shown that women and racialized people are less likely to apply to jobs unless they meet every single qualification. We are dedicated to building a diverse, inclusive, and authentic workplace. So if you're excited about the role, but your past experience doesn't align perfectly with every qualification in the job description, we encourage you to apply anyways. You may be the right candidate for this or other roles that our organization is recruiting for. I think with a statement like that, it does say, yeah, we recognize that everyone has a different story. Everyone has a different journey. Share with us yours, and we can see if we can make it work. So I think there's something in that realm of holistic approaches, things that are being done also within the industry that can kind of inform how to bring on individuals with lived experience in a way that benefits everyone.
I think that hiring people with lived experience has the potential to add something really beautiful and valuable to the workforce. We're able to add input and context into working with these populations in ways that are, quite frankly, immeasurable. We are an asset to the team, and this should be considered in the hiring process and the staff retention process too, because being supported in showing up who we are strengthens the workforce and keeps staff loyal and coming back. My favorite part about having lived experience is like the unspokenness of it. When I'm working with clients, I don't have to tell them that I have lived experience, but the way that you respond to questions and the way that you move through, I think a lot of people can understand and acknowledge in an unspoken way. There's so much power in disclosure and in the camaraderie that can being like, I see you, and knowing the strength that it takes to be somebody with lived experience and still do this work. It's amazing and it should be celebrated.
Having lived experience absolutely adds value to my role. I feel like in some ways I can be like, hey, I've been in that hole. And the good news is I know how to get out of it because I've been down there. So here's the ladder and let's go.
There is a point that I experienced myself where suicide seems very alluring. With that, you can go into suicide prevention and go, hey, I understand there's a lot going on. I know exactly what it's like to be in their shoes versus reading this in a textbook and reading over some policies. And that is why I love this work. That is why I feel like it's my duty to bring this to the job. Having mental health challenges, yeah, it is stigmatizing. And those things stay in you like a poison. And if people understood it at a different level, maybe it would change things. And these conversations will help with that. It's part of the reasons as to why I enjoy this work, because I actually do feel like I can be all aspects of myself. I could be the guy who loves birds, but also a person who understands suicidal ideation really clearly. I have a specialization in project management and a specialization in lived experience. two things that are both really, really helpful for me to do my job, but also both work hand in hand to make me and the teams that I work with contribute to something better. You may not know this now, but you are actually the competition in the future. You have what felt like a curse, but is actually turning out to be a bit of a gift. You have the ability to see multiple worlds in a way that not everyone can. And there is space that is opening up for individuals like you. And the betterment and enhancement of the healthcare system depends on people like you because you get it. And so I would encourage you to see all those job opportunities and postings as callings for you to bring everything you have ever experienced to the table and know that you will be met with people who are supportive and can help soften your fall on hard days, and B, encouraging you to be future leaders of tomorrow.
Thank you. I've seen the videos many, many times now, but every time it feels like a different time and different things really like hit me in different ways. And it's always, I think, just really remarkable how powerful everything is that you guys have shared and how brave you've been to kind of put yourselves on this stage to do this work for the benefit of everybody. So thank you. I have a couple questions, and then we'll open it up for other people as well. We thought maybe we'd just start with a question of asking different folks here to describe what your experience has been like collaborating on the project and what stood out for you in being part of the project and the process.
She just hands it right.
I guess that means you're going first.
I'm going first. What was it like collaborating? So nerve-wracking. I was like, am I really going to sit there and tell all the members of the executive leadership team that I was in the psychiatric ward? Well, apparently. So that was fun. But once I got over kind of my nervousness and the reasoning behind wanting to do this and just like crush stigma in its face, the process was really cool because it was really nice working with everyone from Emily Carr, who was made the whole thing really safe, I would say, and recording our stories and letting us edit out like the things we said that then we immediately regretted. And we had Katie along the way kind of trailblazing with kind of getting this stuff through HR and all the hurdles along the way. So I think making it was so safe and so collaborative that it made it easy for me to do. Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I have a very similar experience to Devin. Obviously, I was super nervous at first and kind of like, oh no, is this going to impact my career? Like, is this going to go south somehow? But I think that, yeah, the creators at Emily Carr and Katie and all of the other staff who've helped us out made it a really smooth experience and really kind of shut down those fears for me. I'm genuinely not worried about that anymore, especially after presenting to the executive leadership team and it went so well. yeah, I think that I can see the value here, and it's really beautiful to be able to share that. And it's been such a gift working with these amazing humans, and especially my co-storytellers. They make it so much easier to sit here in front of a audience and talk on a microphone. So much appreciated to all you folks, and the ones who can't be here couldn't be here today too. Yeah, it's been a really amazing collaboration, and every single step of the process, every single word that we uttered was reviewed and shared and considered to, and then now it's come into this beautiful artwork that we were able to share with you today.
It does hit differently every time you see it,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. What was the experience like? So I think there's probably one thing that stood out to me the most, and that is when, and perhaps for all of you, you know that deep personal thing that almost feels a bit nervous to share, that deep thing that you, under no circumstances, do you want to share. Bringing that into an environment and kind of taking that risk where it's like, okay, I'm gonna say my story and see what happens, and then being met with people who understood it and met with what genuinely felt like love and compassion and care amongst people who, all of us, came from different walks of life. There's something really beautiful and unifying about that. So if there's one word that I would think described the experience, it was camaraderie. It was knowing that all of us had such different experiences and have gone through different challenges in life, and yet that all brought us here with a very similar mission where we want to change the system. We want to make things better for anyone who is coming and needs support. And I definitely felt safe. I felt my voice was always appreciated and valued, and it fed into the reason as to why I'm here today, because I feel more confident as a result of this, and that came from being involved in this work.
For me, I think the very special thing about being a part of this team and listening to the stories, because I was involved in the sessions just to be there to listen and think of ways to visually help in telling those stories. So I wasn't a part of the conversation necessarily when the storytellers were telling their stories, but it was a very deeply meaningful process that I think I wouldn't be able to get anywhere else in any other job setting. And also I wanted to, like, talking more about the collaboration, the process of that was also very special, and I think very one-of-a-kind experience as well, because of how much it was prioritized to think of the comfort of the storytellers in the whole process of it, and to change, we would make a certain segment of the animation, and there would be something that comes up of like, oh, we have to like do the storyboarding again, we have to, but it was in the pursuit of making everybody be comfortable in telling their stories and their journey, when it's really scary process of letting letting people into your deepest and scary experiences. And yeah, I could relate to a lot of the stories being told, even besides of it being from staff experiences, because I don't have a lot of work experience, but I could also relate to a lot listening to everyone's stories. And I think I'm just very glad to be a part of this, and I hope that I did a sufficient job in helping with the visually telling the stories and having that be an aid instead of a disruption. So I'm just hoping that I was successful at that, and I'm very happy to be a part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I'm very grateful to be part of this team and being part of all the storytelling sessions. And I really think that participating in the whole process, not like storytellings and design or animation separately, it really means a lot that together we bring the stories to life. And also, I'm really honored that I can help, like in the design and visuals and animation, that I'm glad to see that the outcome is really impactful because we all work together as a team.
Okay, Katie, you passed the mic off, so this time I think it's for you. Uh, as health organizations seek to include people with lived experience in participating and leading change within healthcare, what do you think is important for sort of other organizations and designers to know about how to sort of engage and support people with lived experience?
I think this series was.
Okay, take the end.
I can project. This series was really special because it was a little bit, it was just a little bit hotter of a topic, and I think really called on me as a person to lean into my accountability and really think about where is that boundary of not causing harm and pushing the status quo. So the peer ones, the patient-facing ones, or the care seeker stories and the family stories were in some ways easier. They were more accepted. I think no one will, argue that someone living with mental health and substance use, especially when their stories are shared kind of in a general sense, experience stigma in healthcare. So there were fewer like hot reactions. And it's changed now. It's actually improved quite a bit, and we've gone on a journey. But sharing stories that were specific to stigma that happened at home, like close to home, within our employment environment, had like brought up a lot of emotions for a lot of people that weren't a part of the project. And so it was just a reminder of when these folks went first. I mean, they were the first BCMHSUS and PHSA staff to share openly about their lived experience in quite a public way and public platform. And when you're the first, you're the only, we don't always know what will come and what to expect. But it went beautifully. I think those difficult conversations were necessary to work through in order to get to a place of change. And as Danny and Devin Alberto mentioned, the initial reaction was perhaps fear, and it's very normal for humans to go to that place. But then through a process of dialogue and of human connection, it landed in a place where we had moved forward, like the substance use policy, we moved forward a formal acknowledgement of mental health as 6 days. There was an embracing of these stories. There was a erasure of that fear to have these shared widely within PHSA, but also publicly. They're now on YouTube, which was a question in the beginning, should they go on YouTube? They're now on YouTube, so big milestone. I feel like I went tangential from the original question, but I think
That's okay. Yeah. I'll let you pass it off to John, and maybe John, what do you think that other organizations and other designers should know or should be thinking about when they want to include people with lived experience and they want to sort of focus on highlighting their stories?
Yeah, I think this picks up on the last question as well. I'm really happy to follow Devin and Danny Alberto, hearing that they felt included and safe in the project, because I think there's the design of the outcomes, if you like, the videos in this sense, but then there's also the design of the process of engagement as well, and that we have to consider. And as designers, we are planners. We get excited about projects. We get preconceived notions about how we might engage and what we might make. And I think you need to kind of park a lot of that, and you need to enter into this space with a really open mind. And it's a bit of a cliche, but meet people where they're at, both as organizations and as individuals, and be responsive to that and listen to that, really listen to that in terms of what people are saying. And sometimes as designers, we don't like to admit our own limitations as well, because we are often solution oriented, but with this project, there's a huge gap in lived experience between the design team and the storytellers, and that's where the strategic advisors and their experience was really crucial in kind of understanding that gap in experience, and that communication between the team was really crucial, I think. I don't know, did I go on a tangent there? Possibly. I think yeah, listening is the most important part, and being responsive as a designer as well, not being too set in your ways.
I think for everybody on the project, there were moments of figuring out when to step back and when to step up. Maybe like the storytellers, it was really about sort of trying to keep you at the forefront, but for the design team, knowing like when to step back and when to step up. And I think also like really for Katie and for BC Mental Health as an organization to know like when to just step back and let the storytellers have control over what they were going to share on behalf of the organization, and also knowing when she needed to like step up and like take a role in like really making change and like advocating for the stories that they wanted to have included and to make sure that they stayed included in the videos.
Yeah, I think there's the trust that needs to be built as well between the team, because in a project like this, we're receiving a lot as designers. You know, we're hearing these stories, we're hearing this knowledge, and the reciprocity of the process. Okay, maybe our stories aren't as relevant to the conversation that we're having here, but I think as a designer, you need to be prepared to give something of yourself to a process to expect to receive something back. It needs to have that reciprocity associated with it, and you build a trust as individuals and as people as well as designers.
What do you guys sort of see as next steps being for organizations like BC Mental Health in continuing to raise awareness and combat stigma and create systems change?
I got lots of plans. Shocker. Well, my personal agenda is to show this to every manager and every HR business partner within our organization and force them to watch it in dialogue. But, you know, are there any of them here today? But I think, you know, this is a very kind of unique series in that we've done this a few times now, where we've shown it to pockets of people across BC Mental Health and had some really cool dialogues from people. And it's a little intimidating when you walk into the room and you see your colleagues who are about to be told your entire story that you've known for 25 years and don't know. But the responses have been like hugs and tears and people having these really cool dialogues, and then at the end coming up after and saying like, I commit to do this action, and like having these really like tangible goals. And even like as Katie said, as we've just been rolling, we haven't even rolled it out and there's already a policy that's been dropped and a public announcement that's been made across BC Mental Health. And so things are already happening, and I'm persistent, so I will keep going and push these dialogues as far as I can go.
Yeah, I think like one of the most important parts here is to not just let this be in vain and, you know, say some pretty words and then kind of let it fizzle out. We need to make sure that the momentum keeps building and that these actions actually happen, and have people take accountability for the changes that need to be made and should have been made a long time ago, as well as the you know, brainstorming ideas that haven't even existed yet, and ways that we can change that perhaps weren't necessary but that are life changing, organization changing. So yeah, just really just keeping the momentum going and making sure that people stay accountable is really a big step.
I want to build on that, the momentum piece. As we think about this work, it's very easy to say it's on YouTube now. You know, everyone go off and do your own homework and find ways to do it yourself. But it doesn't stop here. It starts here. It's that commitment to not shy away from having those honest conversations. And I do that in my team. Everyone in my team knows very clearly what suicidal ideation looks like. And I've explained it to them. I've also explained through my own personal stories the reasons why and how it's beneficial in the work that we do. And so I do think the continuation of sharing these stories, modeling through leading by example, but then also being very, very intentional in terms of how we want to co-create a new system together. Because there's one thing bringing in an individual with lived experience to fulfill that lived experience role, but no one is ever a single label or a single role. It's one facet of them or one experience of them. And so to intentionally find ways to integrate the voices of individuals who have something incredibly beautiful to offer into projects, into programs, and into this existing system that needs a lot of work, that's one thing that I know I'm very, very committed to doing. and hopefully I look forward to seeing all the trickle-down effects that come of that.
All right, I think I'll open it up if there are questions from people. Yes. Okay, that was fast. Okay, go, go, go.
Okay. No, it's all good. I got this. Okay, so the policy that I'm referring to is from 2009. And so if you think about how far we've come in terms of substance use understanding and stigma, no, I'm talking to a group that knows. We have evolved since 2009. So the 2009 policy is actually harmful, it's racist, and it's stigmatizing, and it's colonial. And so our piece was to get it removed. And as of yesterday, last week, we got it removed. So how many years is that? 18? I don't even know what the math was. 2025 minus 2009. A long time. So it's been in draft form, the new version, for like almost 3-4 years it's been working on. I worked on it like 3 years ago. I know that they've consulted with Indigenous Health and Lived Experience and a lot of great people, and I actually am quite satisfied with the new policy. It's just a matter of it's been not implemented, and it's been sitting in I don't know, wherever policy land is for years. And while that was sitting there, people were using the old 2009 horrific policy to help our staff. So I think it was a big win that last week we got it pulled down, and now they've escalated the new one to hopefully be done ASAP, as soon as possible. These videos have kind of got people a little bit nervous, I think, so that's good. So hopefully we see the new one in place really soon. I don't know exactly when. And did I answer all your questions? Okay, wonderful.
Thanks everyone for, one, sharing your stories, and two, I'm also a second-time attendee, and I'm really curious about the character design process. I really loved how stylized they are, and they're like non-human, but human and emotive. And sort of an abstraction of identities of people sharing really personal experiences. And when it is that advocacy piece, I'm just really curious about like, how did you end up with little kind of like lumpy people-ish characters, especially for like invisible illnesses, when there's not really a one way for a human to look. This is something that I have struggled with in doing advocacy and like public awareness campaigns for like dementia-friendly communities where, well, there's not one way for a person living with dementia to look, but it's always a conversation of like, how do you represent such a diverse lived experience? And I think that was, and then the other piece is like when you are being an advocate and sharing your story, how much of yourself do you want to be reflected in that character? Sorry, a huge question.
Mike, so I'll start, but I'm passing it over, so I'm not hogging. We got to pick our own characters. It was so fun. And hilarious that when we all met in real life, because we met on Zoom, we're all the same height. So flukily, we all picked little characters, but you could have picked big ones and tall ones and all sorts of things. But it was really cool. But I'll give it to one of you two, because I already...
Can you repeat the second part of the question one more time, if that's okay?
I think the second part was, how much of yourself did you want to be included? Like, did you want it to look like you at all?
So, yeah, it does.
Just like them. What are you talking about?
When you said lumpy, I'm like, that's so So it's funny because like when I was going through it, I just went with whatever felt nice, and then like just I didn't have any idea in terms of what it was going to look like, and then I started picking elements of different things that I'd like. So my favorite color is green, forest green or pine green that stood out to me. Like the eyes, and I have to give kudos to the design team because like the options they provided, they gave us like 20 different options in terms of what felt right, and there were some days where I didn't feel like 100% when we were doing that, and I just chose the eyes that kind of felt like they reflected myself. So I think one of the things that kind of stood out about this process is there was no way to fabricate realness in this, and a lot of it was premised on what felt right and what felt like you're open to share. But like even I remember I think it was John who mentioned like when I said I love birds at one random point, he jotted down and then it showed up there, and I really like I have bird socks on. It's just I'm a dork that way, but the ability to create something that just felt right and then have such a skilled team add in additional elements that made it feel very reflective of the storyteller's story. I think all that fed into that lumpy little guy that you saw on screen.
Lisa and Jen, wait, do you want to describe how these, like, because they sort of picked which blob they wanted to be, but we showed them a lot of sort of inspiration, and so how did you guys come to sort of this point?
I think I'm gonna hand it off to Tianwei for that bit specifically, but I also wanted to add a bit more on like not necessarily having it attached to the character design itself, but like Alberto mentioned, like the blue jay in the background, or we asked a lot for each storyteller of like what are some things you would say define you, or like if you ask your friend, how would they describe you, or what are some things you really like, to get inspiration for like maybe accessories they could have on their like pocket or something. Like we were in stages of that after they selected the body shapes and stuff. And yeah, like the blue jay, like alluding to how you were from Toronto and you wanted a blue jay in there, I added that. And then for Danny, it was especially difficult because all the things were kind of hard to visualize. Like there was a detail about like you keep your ID card at work in your back pocket, and there's like a string of line with the string and stuff. And I was like, okay, I can't give this character a back pocket. It would look strange. But I like things like the rock background with the meteorite, because you like, you said you like those things, and also having the background for Devin's introduction scene be like a yoga, like not necessarily alluding to yoga, but like just nature, because you said you like that. So little details and things here and there were intentional, definitely, and alluding to some of the things we heard from the storytelling sessions and about the personality and like the likes and dislikes of the storytellers. So yeah, I just wanted to talk a bit about that because I found that to be a really fun part of the project. And it's been a while since I watched this in full, ever since finishing the project. So even while watching it, it's like I'm catching little details here and there of like, oh, I added that in, or these things like the audience is laughing. It's like, oh, that's great. Like it was great to see the live reaction, because I was like, it's been a while now, but replaying the audio again and again, watching it again and again to like check for any mistakes I've watched it probably like 1,000 times. So yeah, it's just, yeah, I wanted to add that. But Tianwei can talk a bit more about the actual visual like shape decisions and stuff and the visual language, because she actually did more of that in the beginning.
Yeah, so for the characters, we decided to have them more abstract because, yeah, Lisa said, like, if we have more abstract characters, the audience can relate to the characters more. And in the beginning of the character development, we decided to let the storytellers make their own characters. So we have all the like different body shapes and leg lengths, like shape of the pupil and the eyebrow and the hands and different colors. So we made like a little co-design mirror board, so the storytellers can pick what they like and fill like what feels most related to them. And we finalize the characters at the end. And for all the side characters, we just use like the neutral colors, and all the main characters are more like vibrant colors. Yeah.
Yeah, just to talk more broadly about our approach to the construction of the visual language, which is something that we've talked about through each of the video series. We wanted to create a brand new visual language for the video series, and we've always looked to step away from kind of, well-trodden depictions of mental health and substance use, which in themselves carry stigma. So it's really about finding a sweet spot where the characters and their world and their environment is recognizable and relatable, but it also gives us enough room for kind of visual metaphor and real kind of poetic exaggeration of certain things to emphasize different points as well. And I think Chenwei and Lisa did an amazing job at developing that. I can take no credit for that.
I just pulled up the other videos that you can watch from the other series. Each time we've done it, there's sort of been a different approach to the visual representation. And I think that's where you do see sort of a piece of the designer's influence in the work. But I think a big part of what we were trying to do this time was to really think about, like, how much do we need to include and what's the most important. And we knew that they wanted to convey like a lot of emotion, and you can do so much of that just through eyes. And so there was a big focus on the eyes as like the main sort of body feature for the characters. And then also there's been a lot of sort of discussion around like how do you represent stigma. And so that sort of lived experience was represented as like these stars throughout the video, which you might have sort of picked up on.
So my question is, like, this is a serious topic and real stories that we are talking about. Have you ever thought that maybe making these like visual cute characters might like lessen the impacts of it or such a thing? I'm just curious to know how people perceive such a serious topic with animation.
I can start and then maybe pass it down. That's a good point, and it's something that we talked about a lot in terms of the visual representation, because the last thing you want to do is to kind of undermine the seriousness of somebody's story through a representation which feels immature, I think. So there was definitely a balance that had to be struck in terms of the accessibility of the visual language. We wanted it to have a broad appeal, and we didn't want people to not engage with it because it was too heavy or too serious. So it was a delicate process of consultation, I think, between ourselves and the team to try and find that sweet spot. And this went through several different iterations. And I know Lisa and Chenwei, they tried multiple ways of depicting different elements of the story. And is this actually capturing it correctly and stuff? But yeah, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think consultation and trying to find the balance between, okay, we're doing justice to the story and we're representing it properly, but also it's accessible and it's visually expressive in the same way.
Like one of the important pieces of having that character in that type of way was that we are trying to be anonymous. Like as much as we're public on YouTube, we still need some anonymity. Oh, I said it right. Yeah, because we all have well, at least I do have private practice clients. I don't want hit in Google. I got a husband here who works in corrections. I don't want his people looking up our family. So there is an element of protectedness from having the characters be kind of that way, and that we then have control over who knows who we are. Like our full names aren't up on YouTube, just our videos are. And so we can come to events like this and share who we are as a person, but we can control that narrative versus it just out in the world and anyone can Google and find out. So yeah, did you want to add? Yeah.
So it's interesting because I didn't actually think about that question before you asked it. And now as I reflect on it, it's interesting because I think there was something about the combination of the animated characters, the use of our actual voices as well, which made it feel very much like, wow, that's me on a screen. And that balance between almost like these familiar characters speaking speaking about topics that feel very unfamiliar, right? Like when you look at an animated character, you maybe think like cartoons or something from like back in the day, who knows? But knowing that that voice was actually ours and that was retained and our words were retained as we wanted them to be, it kind of allowed the discussion of post-traumatic stress disorder, suicide, mental health challenges in a way where it was kind of subtle and direct because of the balance across all those different elements. So I don't actually think it was just one thing by itself, but I do think a combination of all these different dimensions made it feel like that was me on the screen while also it not being me on the screen, which then felt a bit safe. So I hope that helps.
Thank you so much. May I ask just another question? So I know that it's on YouTube and you have shared it on BC Mental Health, but do you have any plans to like make more people hear these stories? Like, what's the plan? Thank you.
I think these folks are 3 stories, and our commitment is to make space for more stories, but storytelling is one piece and accountability to those stories is another piece. So one thing that we're doing this time, sorry, I keep going on a tangent. I will share this because I think it's interesting, but it doesn't directly answer your question, is like actually take the transcripts and we're harvesting recommendations that came from the transcripts because a lot of them live in this form, but a lot of them are just in these documents. So we have someone on our team kind of comb through and pick these out. And then we also establish a workplace advisory group that's led by a leader on our team with lived experience, bring together other staff with lived experience who may not be comfortable yet disclosing in this format, that come together and lead quality improvement initiatives. So back to your question, I think the work is scaling in lots of different ways. And we are committed to, sharing this message widely and also making space for like really trailblaze. These folks have trailblazed. You called me a trailblazer. You're a trailblazer in making it safe for other people to now step forward and share their stories because they went first. And so yes to all of that. And I think we will also be really creative in ways that we engage other staff with lived experience across a spectrum of anonymity. This being, a little more public, and then there are other opportunities to do it, like where we don't know who they are, but they can still have their voice shared.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, like the other video series, you guys use strategically in like training opportunities, and like they bring in other facilitators to host dialogue, like discussions and events that use the videos as like a tool.
Yeah. So these are now part of regular new hire orientation. They've shared with our executive leadership team. Devin's brought it to psych, health, and safety. We'll bring it to PHSA. So we'll find these like pockets of audiences who have influence in different ways and kind of tailor it to what their scope of influence is.
And I think you've also heard, and I've sort of heard from other like people coming across them, and other like organizations and schools are using them to train and have conversations and things.
Maybe I shouldn't be asking a question because I don't work within the healthcare system, but I mean, there's a lot of courage that went into this round of storytelling. I just think you really need to, you can have a huge impact on all HR positions and policies. You can start with the ones within PHSA but I think it's should be much, much broader. And maybe you go to the conferences of the HR professionals, or I think Carol said Heart and Soul, or any number of organizations would benefit. I was a senior manager in the city in 1998 when we brought someone back to work that had been within the forensic system because of a mania incident, and that person had been terminated because that was the policy. But bringing that person back to work was a huge, because he was notorious. Everybody knew his history, what had happened. It was in all the papers and everything, radio. So to bring him back to work was a huge challenge. But we had to, most people responded with open arms and heart. I had a security person who was totally against his even walking past her office. And we had to develop a route for him to get to my office that didn't walk across her office. I mean, it was very challenging. So I think the times have changed. I'm talking about 26, 28 years ago. And I'm grateful for the kind of changes I'm seeing in the openness and the acceptance. So your courage is huge. Do you feel then that you are having the kind of impact at the policy and the practice at the management level, but also with your colleagues? So I think acceptance and the love and the sharing that Devin talked about was really important. So I'm sorry, my question maybe, I've gone on too long, but do you feel that you have had the kind of significant impact that I think you've had?
Well, we got that policy pulled down, so there's that. I think, yeah, it's early days. Like, we just started. So, like, we did, for example, go to sit with all of the correctional health managers and directors. Yeah, that was a good time, which is a tough crowd. And, I met, of course, with some stigma right then and there, right in the room, of course. I was expecting it. There were people that came up and hugged us after and said, this needs to go to everyone everywhere. So, I think we presented this about, or at least I have about 4 times, and every time people have been excited. So, yes, I think, yeah, we'll just change the world. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, like Devin said, it's early days. I've only participated in presenting this, I think, twice or 3 times now, and I would like to see it happen more. And I think, yes, it has made an impact, but I think it has the potential to make much more of it once it starts getting out more. And I'm eager to get more involved. I'd love to bring it across, like my own work site and other, lateral work sites like my own across the province. And I think that it has the potential for a really big impact.
I think every time I see that video, I remember the impact of this, like, and the significance of it. I think there are 2 ways where the message that we have here can spread, and one of them is a very overt way, in forums like this, where it's a dedicated space where we can talk about these things. But the other version is the covert way, and that is the one-to-one conversations that we have. The one-to-one conversations that I have with leaders, the one-to-one conversations I have with my staff, it's those things that kind of bring the content that you see in these videos into different environments. And that is one of the things that I am starting to see is becoming a lot more accepting. So I hope everyone that I work with knows that you can come to me and talk to me about any of these challenges, and I understand. And you not only get camaraderie, but you get confidentiality as well. And I do think that both these approaches, in having these types of venues, this intentional time for us to gather and actually speak about these things, incredibly important. And then when we leave this room, the additional work that comes are those more subtle conversations. So both go hand in hand, and I think we will change the world. And so, but those are some ways where I can see the impact of this work.
We'll take one last question.
Because I have my own history, I'm coming from a background of if a person has a mental health sick leave and they come back but they're not quite up to snuff yet, because that's very common with mental health problems, how does the supervisor, et cetera, cope with that as part of the whole story? I mean, this may be a question that's too big for for today, but that's sort of what's coming to my mind.
I'm just going to jump in because this is something I'm familiar with. If there's one word, compassion. And I say this because I've worked as a project manager for about 6 years, 7 years, and I've worked in projects for over a decade. And there is this emphasis that's placed on getting things done at a certain time. And the one thing that I've learned, especially in my career, is that the work will not get done if the relationships are not there first. And building, if we start thinking about what it takes to actually build a relationship, and you think about a personal relationship that you have with anyone, a friend, a colleague, whoever, it takes time. And so I have taken time off for mental health challenges, and I've come back terrified. And like that exact concern that you have is like, am I able to perform? I'm pretty sure everyone will think maybe not. He's that guy who has that thing going on. But the interesting thing is, when you're met with a sense of compassion, it also means you don't have to be perfect. And with that, it makes it a little bit easier to start ramping up. From the time where this video has come in, I've transitioned from a senior project manager into a director. And I've had those moments where I still feel terrified. I'm still human, still the same person despite the role changing. And I've had moments where I've had to take sick days and mental health days, and I've communicated that to my director. And she has told me, take it. And then when I come back, there's this, I say this to her all the time, where it's like, I'm not going anywhere. Like, I don't want to leave this job. Because to know that I can come back to a place where I'm going to feel cared for and supported, I don't know where else I get that. And so because of that, it makes you come back with so much like vigor. And it's because of that climate where we can actually like share what's actually going on, that yes, acknowledge the fact that people, when they go through their mental health challenges, they may take some time to get back to being 100%. They know that better than anyone else. But then when they do, the benefit of all that is they've seen warmth along the way that will keep them there for a long period of time. Because I really do mean it when I say I don't see myself leaving BC Mental Health anytime soon.
Thank you. I would like to see that as part of the story, because that is what is going to be missing if people don't understand exactly what you've just said.
I think it's also important, because what Alberto just described is an interpersonal relationship. There's also a systems accountability to looking critically at what expectations we're putting on ourselves as staff and our own staff that are unrealistic. And so if someone's coming back to work not knowing, every person's situation is different, there's reasons for gradual return to work, or there can be enablers that are put into place to really support someone to transition back, like relooking at the job description. Is this the right job for them? And so I think one thing that I've seen PHSA actually do really well just in the last 2 years is question what are rules that don't necessarily make sense. And I've seen like our executive leaders break some of those rules. And even though they're making an exception for one person, they're breaking a rule for this person that they believe is the right thing to do. Over time, that will become a standard practice. And so I hope that both kind of come through in this, because it calls on both.
We're at our time, so we're gonna end there, but I think we'll sort of be around if people want to come and ask questions. If you want to watch the other videos from the other series or share the videos with other people, you can do that through the QR code. Like we said, they're all publicly available now. And we really hope that people leaving today will kind of move forward with some action in your own way, whether that's, sharing the videos or the stories, whether it's thinking a little bit differently the next time that you're struggling at work, and how you respond to that, and also how you respond to your peers and your colleagues when you see that they're having a hard time. I know that this process has really made me think a lot about that for myself and the people that I lead and the work that I do. And we hope you also sort of think about in the work that you do how you can include people with lived experience and make sure that they're at the forefront of leading change in your areas as well. So let's just end with like a final huge thank you to the storytellers and the team. Thank you. That sounds great.